So I thought I'd just give you an update on perhaps the final update I'm going to do for this PC1640, Amstrad PC1640, IBM compatible 8088 processor. So the final thing was putting a network card in it. Previously I put a compact flash, a hard drive replacement, I put in a modern placement for a Sound Blaster 1.5, so it's got decent sound output. Also got a GoTech drive there as well, so I think that's pretty much all of the updates. Oh, and also I've now put in the internal power supply unit, so it doesn't need the monitor anymore. Instead I've got a RGB to HDMI device that converts the output from well, it's an EGA output, and it converts it to HDMI for display into a keyboard video monitor switch into my display here. So I've put the network card in, so I'll give you a quick test run, and then I'll work through what I've done with it. It's a 16-bit 3-com Etherlink III network card with an RJ45 socket on it, and even though it's 16-bit, it will work in 8-bit slots. So I managed to find one that worked, and it's working very happily. So I'll switch on and show you what my current setup is like. I haven't got any batteries in the computer at the moment for storing the time. There we are. So at boot, I've got a couple of batch files in here. The first one, network.bat. What this will do is it'll load the 3-com driver for the Etherlink card. It launches something called DHCP from the MTCP GitHub, and that basically loads up I've reserved the IP address on the router. It gets the dynamic address. It's now checking the time and updating DOS, and finally it does DHCP again, because in case the time changes and the DHCP needs to be refreshed. After having done that, I can then do things like run an FTP server or access a bulletin board. There's a few utilities in MTCP, so I'll just show you what they look like. So yeah, I've got a ping tool, FTP server, internet relay chat, speed test, and telnet. So we can ping just to check things are working properly. Ping the beeb, and hopefully, yeah, we're getting some stuff back. That's good. What else can I do? So I'll go for telnet next. I've got one here that I've already created. Account for. Hopefully I spelt that all correctly. And this looks like quite a nice bulletin board, simple to use. So I'm going to I've already created an account on it. What I've discovered is if you make a mistake, you have to press the Control and backspace key on the keyboard. The backspace key by itself doesn't do anything, so you have to press Control and backspace. Possibly that's an issue with the Amstrad, but anyway, at least that's the solution. So I've already created an account on here. And sometimes in some fields, you have to press one character first of all before they become registered. So in this board, well, it looks pretty straightforward. There are other ones as well. but I can check my emails, etc. Nothing new happening. Okay, I can have a look at messages that other people left. And I can have a look through them at the various messages that other people left. Quite good. And you can go through the messages by hitting the return key. Yeah, this looks pretty easy to use, this one, compared to other ones that I was looking at before. I haven't tried looking at the files yet, so I wonder what they look like. System bulletins. I noticed that graphic takes a little time for it to load. You have to press spacebar. So what about the files area? Oh, I've got some original games on it. That's quite nice. I don't know how to download them though, so perhaps I'll click the space bar. I'll go to download files. Oh, I don't know what protocol to use on this one. Yeah, so I'm not too sure about this yet, but that looks like the basics of it. So that's quite a nice system. There's lots of other telnets to use as well. Yeah, so that's telnet, one of the BBSs, but there's loads more out there. Now about the FTP server, so that one's quite cool as well. So if I put in FTP serve, so that loads up an FTP server. Now on my modern Windows 10 machine, if I launch FileZilla, I'll just go into Site Manager because I've set this up previously, but I've set up the computer here with the same IP address and the username and password that I'd set up in the password file. Which I'll show you in a second if I haven't done already, I need to click connect, and that's me connecting to the FTP server, and it shows up back on the PC1640. I can then explore the hard drive here. Can have a look through at some of the stuff on the computer, and I should be able to let me just go to download here, and let me have a look if I got the file donkey. Yeah, I haven't tried that one out, so I wanted to try that one out. The first Bill Gates game, I think, for IBM DOS. So that's worked. One thing I do notice is in FileZilla, it has a tendency of timing out after 20 seconds, even when an upload seems to be in progress to the 1640. So in here, you have to change timeout in seconds from 20 to 0. But it works. It works quite nicely, quite fast to do. So no problems. So here's the Ethernet card itself. It's just hidden under the sunroof. And I've just removed the cable. It's hidden behind the sound card. I'll just show with the side panel as well. So here it is. Fits well. I've got one of these Ethernet adapters that just turns it into a right angle, like that, and then a little connection to my Ethernet port. So I'll just pull it out and show you the card. It's a very small card. So it has got the 16-bit connections at the end here, but it only really needs the 8 bits, and luckily those fit okay into the PC1640. On the software setup side of things, I followed a couple of really useful guides. The first guide was a blog post on VoidStar, I believe that was the name of the website. I'll put a link in the description, which described running a 16-bit card on an 8-bit computer IBM, not specifically for the PC1640, but I thought it was worth a shot. So that's a really useful blog. And then also I used the MTCP website, which has got some really good videos, one of which is to Paul's Computer Lab, is it? Phil's Computer Lab, where he outlines the process for setup. Again, not for the 1640, but good enough that it worked on my setup. So from those, you need 2 main files. One is a modified driver for the Freecom card by Nesta, I believe. That's downloadable from GitHub. You could put it on a single floppy or a Gotek image of a floppy. That looks like these 2 files here, basically. A config file which is quite large, takes up a lot of RAM apparently, and the actual driver itself, which is small. So Nest has done a few edits on that in order to make it run on an 8088 processor instead of the 286 processor. When you you do a copy of that to your hard drive, or you can actually run the config file off a floppy if you had to as well. And running that, you'd run that for the first time, and then you'd set up the MTCP software. But I don't want to mess things up too much on my setup, but just to show you what the config program looks like. So you install the card physically. At this point, I think it does detect the card installed, or it might just show up there. But anyway, that's there. You can then configure the NIC. It's selected by default. And you can either do an auto. If you do an auto configure, you'll always get this message saying, for me anyway, I found that it never detected a free address. Now I won't. What I did then do is I did then modify it to match the settings in the VoidStar blog, and you can modify it by choosing the correct address. That's good, and then press the shift and tab key to the top. And I had to change the interrupt from 10 till 3, but that was all good. And then finally, once that was all okay, and I had to make sure it was DOS client, an RJ45, no modem, disabled, matching the VoidStar blog post, and then you press OK to just programs the ROM chip on the card. So having done that, you can then run some tests where it checks the EEPROM, and now I had tried a different card and it kept failing on these tests. I'm not sure what was wrong with that other card. I think it might have been set to be programmed not to use ISA slots, but I'm not sure about that, but I couldn't get it working. Someone else might well be able to get it working, I'm not sure. But for this one, it all checked out fine. So I won't run the test here. It got kind of 0.4, and then as it passed those points, I think I cancelled at this point here, and I just carried on with the installation. So once that's in place, you can actually start running the driver with the command. What was it again? So you'd run. Phil describes this very nicely. You would run the driver with that, and then I think you have to put in something like 0x00 at the end as well. Now that address 0x00 needs to match. So this is where you move on to the next part of the process. That address needs to match a config in some configs for MTCP. So just showing you what MTCP looks like. So again, these are all some great utilities available on GitHub. And you download them on GitHub. They're very small, fit on one floppy drive. Again, you copy that all to your hard drive, and you need to make sure that there's a file in here called MTCP config. There's a sample config file that you can use as a starting point. And there it is, yeah, the bottom one, MTCP config. So let me just show you what that looks like for me. So in here, the important one is a packet in. Oh, so it's 0x60 is the address for packet initialization. I guess that stands for. So that needs to match whatever you provide to the driver when you install that. I also changed the host name to PC1640. Phil updates these. I don't know how important they are because I don't know if I'm going to be using Internet Relay Chat quite yet, but I changed them anyway. What else did I do on here? I think I changed the FTP connect timeout to 1500. It might have been 500 before, just because I was looking to resolve that issue with FileZilla, but that's actually an issue in FileZilla itself. Also, I've told it about where my password file is for FTP server. So I made a subdirectory called FTP serve with a file called password.txt, which was based off a template. And I think these things at the bottom just get updated by themselves. Actually, it saves itself when I run DHCP. So that was the config file. And it's important actually that you and then with an auto exec, I've set that MTCP config in place. In fact, I'll just go back to show you what else is going in there. And then I also made a subfolder called FTP serve. And I made a copy of password, see where it says FTP pass, the text file, that's the starting point as well, so you can make a copy of that. I made a subdirectory called FTP serve, and in there I've made a copy of FTP pass.txt and put it in here basically. So mine looks like, following Phil's advice basically. I didn't think it'd work, but it did. Oh, did I go for the wrong one? So in here, the only line I really needed to be uncommented was my username, password, and then left none, any and all in place, and deleted the 2 lines underneath that specify other types of users. And I think there was an extra line underneath here as well that I had to delete. But apart from that, that was all good. So that's the password file. Within the overall MTCP config, it tells the computer where to find that password file. That was good. The other setups at that point was to go to auto exec, and I think I set a variable in here. Yeah, I set a variable here to tell this variable MTCP config where the config file was for MTCP. I think that's probably about it in there actually. And then I did say I had an overall, when I want to launch the network, I run network.bat. So just to show you what's in it. So I set a time zone as well to UTC +0. I needed to put the +0 in, otherwise it kind of got 8 hours late. So that's relevant when it's running the SNTP command a bit later on. So I set that variable first of all. Then I tell it to load the FreeCom driver, passing it the packet int address 0 × 60, which needs to match your config file. Then I get it to run the DHCP command once. That kindly does the handshaking with my router, where I've already allocated an IP address to the MAC address of the card, as outlined in Phil's video. Then it runs that nice command that Voidstar mentioned, which is getting the updated time, which is great. From there, and it uses the time zone as specified above. And then finally I do a DHCP again. I think what might happen, I've tried to use Telnet without doing the DHCP a second time, and I think that the problem with updating the time is that it will then mean that I need to renew the DHCP contract with my router. So I just do that again one final time. So I run that now. Just show you how that works again. So it's getting the team done, loading the driver, it's getting confirmation of what the My Ethernet address is. That's the MAC address as we would be familiar with these days. And then it's requesting the line from my router, Wi-Fi router. Well, it's actually Ethernet router. Finally got it, and then I'll get some readout of, yeah, it's been given 192.168.164. That's good, and it's saved that to the MTCP config. So yeah, that's the IP address. There's the one that's I've already predetermined within my router software that the Ethernet card's going to be given. And at that point, I can again go to MT and perhaps ping www.bbc.co.uk and hopefully I get my ping brought back there. So that's basically it. So it's a nice setup.